Hello everybody, this is Mr. Rob, and welcome back to episode number 61 of the Houston Astros franchise here on MLB The Show 20. Today, we're going to take a look at some draft prospects as we are just 6 days out from the 2021 MLB Draft. So if you're excited for this, make sure you leave a like and subscribe down below, especially for more franchise content. Let's make 2021 a good year here on the channel. So coming into the draft, if you didn't know, the Astros, due to the sign stealing scandal, do not have a first or second round pick in MLB Draft. So usually what I do is I kind of take two players who I know won't be anything with the first and second round pick, since MLB The Show doesn't really honor that. So we're not going to really pick until round number 3. So I thought today we'd take a look at maybe some late round prospects who could be potential replacements for this team. So we're going to have gameplay footage on 4 of them. Starting off with this series between USC and UCLA. So the Battle of Los Angeles, these teams had a 3-game series here at Dodger Stadium. As you can say, it's a packed house. But for both teams, I want to take a look at a relief pitcher on both squads. Starting off with University of Southern Cal's Terry Burns, a 5'10", 206 pounds pitcher from USC. He is only 19 years old, and he kind of intrigues us. If you haven't seen past couple of years, you haven't had the best bullpen pitching, so I think beefing up that pin depth would be not half bad idea. Terry Burns, he's got 3 pitches. He throws a 4-seam fastball at 12.6 curve and a changeup, so not the most versatile arsenal, but he is very good at limiting base runners. Terry Burns isn't going to allow that many batters on base, whether it be via the home or via the base hit or via the walk. He's very good at controlling his pitches. He's got very good command, and he also has solid break, as you can see on some of his curveballs, some of his changeups. Those pitches do break pretty strongly. And his velocity is not the fastest. He's not going to blow you away with 97, 98, 99 mile an hour stuff, but his fastball can get up there in the 94, 95 range. So he's got decent velocity. As you can see in this one, UCLA won game number 1 in this set, but we're going to still stay with this series. Going to the cons, though, of Terry Burns, he can give up the occasional long ball. Sometimes he does get in trouble with his pitches. Sometimes his pitches might hang a little bit too much, and he is prone to the long ball. And if you've been watching this episode, that is kind of a weakness for us, as we give it a lot of long balls. Now, the other pitcher in this series I want to take a look at is on the UCLA squad, and that is Gary Wilder, the left-handed pitcher out of UCLA. Now, don't mind his height and his weight you just saw. He's actually 6'5", 201. I forgot to edit his stance before recording the first part of this episode. He will be a lot taller as we get into the second half of this series. I guess he hit a growth spurt in college. We'll just kind of go with that. But Gary Wilder, he throws a 2-seam fastball, a changeup, a slider, and a sweeping curve. He is a lefty as well, so we don't have many lefty pitchers in our bullpen. I think the only one we really have is Brad Hand, and he's more of a setup closer role. So we don't really have a true middle relief left-handed pitcher, so maybe Gary Wilder can fill that void. He has very good control of his stuff, so like Terry Burns, he can get his pitches to where they need to be. But unlike Terry Burns, he actually doesn't give up the long ball very often. So Gary Wilder will keep the ball in the ballpark and not allow base runners to hit him deep. Some of his cons, though, is sometimes he does take chances with his location. I think sometimes he will get in trouble with runners on base because he'll get down in the count, and sometimes will force a fastball where it doesn't need to go, or force a changeup high and inside, or whatever it may be. And that can kind of cause him to get rattled sometimes. You allow Gary Wilder, if he gives up 1 runner, if he gives up 2 runners, he can start to get rattled and lose his confidence. So I think he might need to work on that as the series goes along, or as the game goes along, however. And also, he is 22 years old, so he is the oldest of the prospects we're going to take a look at today. So it's going to take him a couple years to reach the majors, so by the time Gary Wilder reaches the majors, he might already be 25, 26, 27. So you got to wonder if you want to take a late round on him, knowing that you're going to have to wait a few years anyways for him to reach the majors. But those are the 2 relief pitchers we take a look at in this episode. Depending on who we want, it kind of depends on what happens. Terry Burns is going to give us that more solid, I think, right-handed role in the pen. I think he might be the more complete product. But Gary Wilder is that lefty. He is 6'5". He has good control of his stuff. I think Gary Wilder may be the way for us to go if it comes down to those two in the round 3. It just really depends on how the draft falls. I mean, you have no idea what's going to happen when you don't have a first or second round pick. You see in this series, UCLA won the first 2 games, but USC won game number 3. So UCLA did beat them. Don't worry about Kershaw taking the L. Can't really control everybody. But here's Terry Burns' card. He's 65 overall, has 70 potential at C's. You can see he has a lot of 80s, a lot of 75s. So definitely has good potential. And then we're going to swap over to Gary Wilder now. And as you can see with Gary Wilder, not as high in the walks and Ks. That goes way down. But he has 65 potential, so not as high as Terry Burns. But I really like his command. I really like his velocity. I like his break. I like his home run. He has all the stuff high that I want to look for in a relief pitcher. So for the second half of this episode, we're going to take a look at 2 prospects in this battle between Cal State Fullerton and the Hawaii Rainbow Warriors. Yes, we are traveling down to Hawaii, not Florida, like it says where this game is. But we're going to take a look at that man right there. Starting pitcher Ryan Benjamin from the University of Hawaii. Ryan Benjamin is a right-hander, 5'11", 194, only 20 years old. This is a man who has grown up on the island of Maui. He is born in Maui and has not left the state of Hawaii until this year in college baseball. He didn't play his first freshman year, but then sophomore year he finally started to play, and he actually started to finally leave the island. So he's born and bred here in Hawaii. He's born and raised, very versed in their culture. And that kind of is the reason why he ended up at Hawaii. He's a very good pitcher in my opinion, but never leaving the island. I think a lot of scouts, a lot of college recruits might not have recruited him as highly. And Ryan Benjamin stayed here at home in Hawaii. He's part of the reason why Hawaii has won their conference. They actually won the Big West Division, finally knocking off Cal State Fullerton, which has kind of dominated for a few years. But Ryan Benjamin has done a very good job leading this Hawaii squad. They made it to the College World Series. And a part of that reason is because he has a heater of a fastball. I mean, this man throws straight gas, as you can see in some of these pitches. He also has a cut fastball that can get pretty high as well. And he ends that off with a swerve in his arsenal. With that being said, though, sometimes this fastball can get him in trouble. I mean, considering he throws a fastball and a cutter, that's 67% of his pitches rely on his heat. So sometimes batters will lock on to his fastball and take him deep at times. He also has phenomenal break and high potential, but needs to work on his control and limiting his walks. The other guy we'll take a look at in this series is our first position player, and that is catcher Ricky Gomez. He is a right-hander, 6'4", 218, out of Cal State Fullerton, originally from Pennsylvania. His father was in the military and was stationed out in California. So although he was born in Pennsylvania, Ricky kind of grew up in California and kind of stayed out here by getting a role at Cal State Fullerton. Couple of pros for Ricky Gomez. He has good contact hitter, and he's a very good blocker as well. So he can kind of do both the offense and defensive sides of the ball game. And he won't make many errors. He's very smart. He's not going to overthrow base runners. He's not going to force throws. But some of his weaknesses is he isn't the strongest. He's not going to be a catcher that hits a lot of long balls despite his size, which is a little deceptive because you'd think a man 6'4", 218 is going to have a little bit more power than he does. And also his arm is a little weak. As you see right here, there's a base runner taken off. Not really too much of his own, but unless the runner doesn't get a good jump, I don't think Ricky Gomez is going to really be throwing out many batters. But with that being said, if you've watched the Astros this year, you know that out of all of our position players, catcher's obviously been our weakness. Maldonado really hasn't had that good of a year, and Stubbs has finally started to take a step a little bit, but he's more of a defensive catcher. So if we want to maybe get a catcher of the future, maybe you go Ricky Gomez in the later rounds. Maybe you take a flyer on him. He has pretty high potential, so he might go. He is only 19 years old. So I could see some other teams taking a flyer on him since he's so young to potentially improve. So that is Ricky Gomez. He is the only position player we're actually going to watch film of in this episode. And we'll take a look at his card right here. Actually, here is Ryan Benjamin. Never took a look at Ryan Benjamin. See, 80 potential, so scouts are really high on him. He throws a good fastball, good break, but he needs to work on that control control, which sometimes scares me as a pitcher, especially when I'm controlling some of the games. And we'll take a look at Ricky Gomez right here. Good contact, good blocking, and reaction to that. All jumps off the books. And you can see his power in his arm isn't necessarily the best. With that being said, though, we're going to take a look at one more player. I don't have any game film on him, and that is catcher Michael Majika. Now, the reason I don't have any film on him is because he missed all of this season with a torn ACL. He was going to the Georgia State University, so the Panther down in Atlanta, but tore his ACL, so he missed all the season. He's just going to go ahead and go pro at 19 years old. He thinks he's young enough to get by the injury. He's more of a defensive catcher, so in my opinion, since he bats left, he kind of compares to Garrett Stubbs for me. He's more of a Garrett Stubbs type of catcher. And if we want to replace Garrett Stubbs, Michael Majika might be a carbon copy. Plus, it is kind of cool he can play both corner infield spots. But he's kind of low right now, so he's going to take a lot of work to get to the majors. But he does have that potential. He could maybe tap into that if he can get through the ACL. Just depends if you want to take a flyer on him. Those are a couple of the prospects as we are 6 days away from the draft. Next episode, though, we'll have a series against Boston, and then we'll travel to Seattle to face our division rival Seattle Mariners to end up the month of May. But that'll do it for this episode. I hope you guys enjoyed the college episodes. I actually do have a lot of fun kind of creating the teams, creating the players, giving some backstory. And I hope you guys do as well. Give me any feedback you think I might, that can make these episodes a little better. That's going to do it for me. Thank you guys so much. Make sure you leave a like and subscribe down below, especially if you want more franchise content. This is Mr. Rob, and I'll see you in the next one.